Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. Well, I appreciate the compliments on the Church Safety Summit. My pastor said it was the first time. I said, first time we had a safety summit? It was the first time we got all the different denominations in one room. And I go, well, that wasn't my goal, but you know, whatever. So I appreciate the compliment, and it did come off very, very well. Just for those of you that didn't know what we did, there's been a lot of concern after the shooting the latest shooting in Texas in a church. And I was getting a lot of questions from the various churches about what should we do. And I said, we really need to get together and look at all the safety and security concerns. It's not just about active shooter. And in fact, our speakers talked about a lot of the things in our houses of worship that we have to consider, and that's things like fire and hazards that hurt kids and bounce houses that fly away with children on it. So we had a full day session. The speaker, the keynote speaker, was a woman called by the name of Tina Lewis Rowe. And I know this isn't why you had me here, but I just wanted to tell you. When I started this idea of organizing this safety summit, I started doing some research and found that in Jefferson County, Colorado, they had a recent similar event. And why reinvent the wheel? So I called the sheriff there. And incidentally, that's a county that's had a lot of tragedy. In fact, Columbine, that's in Jefferson County. So they're well aware of issues like that. And when I called the sheriff, he called me back, and as I said the other day, I wasn't thinking about the time change, but he called me back later at night and said, you got to get this Tina Rowe to come out. She is a decorated 33-year law enforcement veteran who was a U.S. Marshal after she retired from the Denver Police Department as a captain. And she came out and did a wonderful job. And then our local FBI office, Brent Isaacson, talked about threat assessment and in a term called leakage, when a lot of the times the shooters, especially in school shootings, are really sending out signals well before the event takes place. So he's trying to get people to understand how to read those signals and then take action before the event. So tonight, I was asked to talk a little bit about school security, and I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to ask you for yours too, because this is something nobody's got the magic yet. My belief, I feel very strongly about this because we're experienced with it, is that the availability of a school resource officer in the schools is really a triad benefit. I say that because that officer acts in three different capacities. One, security, obviously. Two, security plans and assessment of those plans, including evacuation plans and/or shelter plans. The second function, and I can't use the term teacher because I might offend somebody. They're not teachers. We're not certified teachers. But we're presenters. So we're going into the classroom and we're talking to students about not only the job of law enforcement, but how our job relates to other subjects. For instance, it's important that you can read, write, comprehend, and put on paper if you're a cop, because our life surrounds around paperwork. And that paperwork is what makes the case go forward and is reviewed and scrutinized by the legal teams. You also need to know math. You need to know sciences. If you want to run a breath test for a DWI, you need to know about Charles' Law and Henry's Law. So we want the school resource officer to show kids that there's a reason you want to study these things that's going to help you later in life, even if you're not in law enforcement, for a lot of different professions. And then the third part of the triad is, I can't use the term counselor, because that's a job. We're mentors. So we're talking to kids, and you got your ear to the ground. You know when there's issues going on. In fact, there was a point in time when we had 8 different school resource officers in 8 different districts. That's when we had a grant. When that grant expired, schools said, we can't afford this anymore, which I understand. You have to make a decision between a teacher and a cop. They pick the teacher. They're schools. But, we had a system in which our SROs were looking at the night before. What happened last night? Was there a fight at this kid's house? Was there, a drug overdose at their house? So they could intervene with that child when they came to school and try to get them down, at least settle down or get them assistance if they need it. So I believe in the SRO. Now, the big question is, who's funding it? And how are we going to make that happen? Well, I have my own opinions. You can, and I'm surely open to yours too. And I'm going to take this SRO to in a second, to the next point. But anyway, funding. The state or federal government. I don't believe the school systems locally should be funding the SROs right out of their school budgets. It's too big a burden for them. Now, there's been a lot of talk about armed teachers. What's my opinion about that? Maybe I stole your question that you were going to ask me. I feel a lot more comfortable with an armed teacher in a school that has an SRO, because we have this issue of response. You show up at the school, there's more than one gun out, and it's not just the bad guy. So having an SRO there, working with, if you have a teacher that wants to carry a gun, and then they could train together, so they can work in tandem instead of sporadic. And I know from being involved in situations myself, it is stressful times 100. So you want to make sure that those people are well qualified if that is their choice. Now, that in New York State is allowable under the law if the school approves it. And I can't recite the exact section or the verbiage in the penal law, but the school has to approve it in writing. So that is allowable in New York State if that is an option that the school wants to pursue. However, a lot of them are concerned about liability. And understandably so, we live in a very litigious society. We love to sue each other. So there's going to be a lot of research being done to look into that. And some might say we don't want anything to do with it. So that's one way we're looking at school safety. The other thing that I'm doing ourselves is my deputies are assigned to the schools that are outside of the incorporated areas like City of Jamestown and Dunkirk, and where they have their own police. But every day my deputies visit the schools randomly at a time that whenever they can do it within their patrol schedule. If they're not on calls, they're assigned to come into the school, go in, walk around, talk to the staff, administration, see the kids, and those are random. I told them, I do not want you guys to get into a routine. Show up at different times of the day, give here's a marked car coming through the parking lot, and an officer getting out and communicating. And it's got a lot of positive feedback for that. There's talk about metal detectors. Some schools have done that. One of the things that I will be doing in the very near future is probably after the school year ends. I've talked to some of the superintendents about sitting down together and getting our technical people, not the superintendents myself, but our techies. So our 911 center can see what's going on with those video cameras in those schools when there's an issue. We don't want to watch the day of, the school day. There's some folks that I don't want you watching my kid. We don't want to watch your kid. But if something bad happens, we want responding law enforcement, EMS, fire service to have every bit of information they can have. So we're trying to work toward that end. It sounds simple, it's not. It's lots of systems, all remote, and all different. Many are different. So those are some of the things we're looking at for safety. We did some training, same kind of training we did with the churches. The FBI did that training at a school in service, and all the school districts in Chautauqua County were invited to do the same kind of training. So those are some of the preliminary things that we're doing to help with the school systems. And I'll steal Special Agent Brent Isaacson's words from his presentation. If you look at pure statistics, schools are the safest place that our kids can be in the world. Raw numbers. Now, it doesn't mean we aren't concerned about active shooters and bad things happening in schools, but statistically, the crime rate in schools is very low compared to other places. That doesn't mean we're going to just turn our back. We have to be vigilant and creative. So, there's kind of my baseline. I'm open to suggestions. You might have the best idea that we never thought about. So, have at it. I mean, if you've got some suggestions, yes, sir.
The sheriff's department should basically do the training. Is there some entity within the sheriff's department that can train teachers that would want to do that?
Yeah, here's the issue.
Is there something informed?
The liability issue comes to play then. Because if we train, we own you. And if we, the liability, we don't own. But if we train and the first thing that happens in a lawsuit, not first, but one of the first, what's the training? What's your policy? Did you follow the policy? So there might be some reluctance. I mean, we haven't been there yet. We have one district we had to sit down with that talked about this seriously. And we sat down with Judge Cass and the school administration, myself, and we talked about the legalities. So bringing it to the county and saying, could you train? Sure, if they're able to assume the liability, we could train. I mean, they have to go through similar training that a law enforcement officer goes through.
Liability in the school system
Yeah.
as it is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, but the county gets drawn into that. Yeah, as soon as we start training, the county gets drawn into it. Yes, sir.
So you've had a sample of one out of 18, 19 school districts. What was their response? We heard your take on it. What was their unfiltered initial response or tempered after your?
They called us to the meeting.
Right. So
Right.
I mean, how did they present? What were they looking for? How did they present their desired outcome solution to be?
They said they wanted to know if they could legally arm teachers, and we gave them, the judge was there to talk about the law, and we left there saying, yes, under these circumstances, you absolutely can. And the training thing is all liability. It's not criminal law. The penal law says if the school approves it, in that case, the school board will most likely would give the superintendent the authority to approve it. Then the school would have to come up with a policy and practice. What I'm saying is I want that to be in concert with law enforcement.
Right, and just as a follow-on to that, I understand from your perspective on that, it does make total sense to me, but conversely, we've got a large geographically spaced county. Total populace doesn't really support a lot of the activities that we might otherwise like to see. Third most important point I'd like to bring up is grants are not free money.
No.
Okay, which means that in order to be successfully working a program like this, it would have to be, I'm not saying one side or the other, but there might necessarily have to be a blend. There might be a tipping point for deciding SROs and some districts that are just totally on their own. I get the idea of multiple guns out at the same time, in a crisis scenario, because that is stress. But at the same time, you've got folks that are out there, folks I mean being teachers, to assign the names to it, that are willing to do it, then we could probably offer them a stipend of some kind. This has to be worked out through the districts. So that, because there's an additional burden of responsibility, additional training requirements. I would think probably an annual, something probably scaled down to what you folks have to go through on whatever your regular training bases are.
Right.
It's just that, putting an SRO in every single district is the gold plate. To me, it'd be like the Cadillac version, but based on our median income, we're at a different level.
Sure, I understood completely, and that's why when the program initially started to go away because the funding did, I understand that, no, completely. Yes, sir.
One thing that could be done that doesn't cost any money, and don't take any training, if they do away with the philosophy of gun-free zones. Exactly. I would be happy if the lady in here tonight that's permitted would have a handgun in her bag.
Okay, and that's beyond that's in the New York State penal law. I can't change that myself. That would be something that the legislature would change, but it does give the schools the authority to authorize individual or individuals to carry a gun on their campus. That is in the law. Yes, ma'am.
The schools are not dealing with the real problem. The real problem is not guns or resource officers or more cops on the metal detectors. It's the mental health issue. These individuals are not mentally stable, and they're out there on the streets, in the schools, free to go wherever they want to. It could have been a grocery store, it could have been a neighbor's house, it could have been anywhere they chose. They're mentally not stable, and nobody's dealing with finding these people, even though people knew about him. They knew he was not right.
Well, I will totally agree with you. When I make the statement that I run the largest mental health facility in Chautauqua County, I mean it. And because it's true. I have more people incarcerated that have a diagnosis of mental illness of some kind than the 2 hospitals combined.
How do
So,
schools deal with it?
well,
They've got to do something.
You know-
My daughter works, she works in a mental health, I'm from Pennsylvania, but she works in a mental health facility. She's like a drug and alcohol and mental therapist. She says there's so many laws now that are protecting, them. Yes. Like, say you have a child that's a lot of problems, and the parent thinks, well, maybe we should put this child in like just a behavior clinic where he can be monitored a little bit and maybe work on him a little bit.
Voluntary.
And
Voluntary.
send him back home, but you can't do it anymore. You can't do it anymore. That's the problem, right there.
well, we also,
The parent has to give up their parental rights in
Yeah.
order now in order to put their child a child into like a behavior modification program, somewhere where people can, like more of a one-on-one.
and it's not always students in the school, as we've seen, it's people from, yeah, I agree with you. I feel that, our mental health system is really,
When they closed all the
Gone.
mental places and let them out, I really felt bad, because I
Yeah.
was working at welfare, and I felt bad, because those people aren't
they can't cope.
capable.
And if you want to watch a story, it's getting a little aged now, but there is a PBS did a story called The New Asylum. And The New Asylum is heart-wrenching because it shows cases of people that obviously have no business in our jails and prisons, but there is nowhere else. And in one of the interviews there, the head of the prison system, it's in Ohio, says, actually it was a counselor, a mental health counselor, said, I don't like the fact that the state is improving its mental health services in prison, because all we're doing is justifying using prison for mental health. So that New Asylum, you can get it, just Google it, you'll see, it's about an hour long, but it's heart-wrenching.
I was going to reserve a room at Gwanda, but they closed it. I'm a registered nurse. I'm retired now, but my last 10 years I worked on a dementia unit. Well, when they started closing some of these, like Gwanda, and we got quite a few of the residents from there. Well, they came with all their problems, and and some of their problems were worse than just dealing with dementia.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I have them in our jail. And our people aren't equipped to deal with them. And it's really an unfortunate circumstance. I had a question over here, and then I'll come right back. Herb.
How much would an average resource officer cost the school board? Of average.
About $75,000 a year.
So that would probably be 0.001 of a $4 million or $12 million budget.
Well, you can do math better than I, but I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to question you. Yeah.
Very much.
Is that the loaded cost, 75,000, or does that not include health and disability, sick time, and all the other stuff?
Yeah, that would be complete, the complete cost. Correct. Yeah. You had I'm sorry, and then we'll come.
Just what exactly has the SAFE Act done that would have been of any consequence to these shootings?
I can't answer that. I'm not here to endorse the SAFE Act. I didn't write it. I actually spoke against many parts of it. So
Would not have done nothing to
I-
obliterate
yeah.
any of those shootings.
Right.
And while I'm up here vocalizing the Baltimore shooting, that officer did exactly what he should do. And how much did you see of his name on the
Mm-hmm.
television? Nothing, because they were all hammering on the gun control thing in the walls.
Well, the child shot himself too.
That's true.
So
But-
he was gonna commit suicide, and the resource officer.
But
did
he was
fire.
right there doing what he was supposed to do, when he was supposed to do it.
Right. Yes,
Right.
ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay, getting back to the liability issue, the training there. We had an outside agency, the FBI, do the training for both the deputies and the teachers. Would that put the onus on them?
Yeah, and that is an option that some school, we talked about that in our meeting, that there are third-party training providers that, and you'll see more of them crop up, I believe. We have them here in the county that could do it. You know, we have those that do the pistol permit courses, probably could step up and design a course specific for that. And that would take the liability out of our agency. You know, if the county says we're good, go. I have probably a dozen firearms instructors in my agency. Yes, sir.
Well, be it as you already did it, say that there, you have officers going around different times. What would be the option of putting in a small little, quote, substation? So that what you would
Are
do is...
you bugging my phone? We just signed a contract with Pine Valley.
This could go into all different districts,
Right.
so a random time, an
Right.
officer walks in, does his paperwork.
We have one at
Please,
Ripley.
there.
We're at Ripley. We just signed a contract with Pine Valley to put a substation. Now, that doesn't mean there's going to be a deputy there, but it gives us a place. Right. But we come and go. And the other thing, just toot my own horn, pat myself on the back, we used to have our own fuel depots. We paid for, we had our own fuel systems with tanks, and we had to have an EPA come in. And I said, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, we've been doing it for years and years and years. And I called the school superintendents. I said, can we use your fuel depots? We'll pay you for the fuel, but we'll be on your grounds. You're maintaining them anyway. So we got rid of ours. So we have an agreement with Ripley. We just signed an agreement. There's no money exchange, just giving us the authority at Pine Valley, because they're remote. We don't have anything real close to them. And we're going to use their fuel depot. Again, they charge us back the cost of the fuel. And I'm going down to see Clymer the first week of April. They've expressed an interest in the substation. We have a substation at Peak and Peak. I don't know if anybody knew that, but it's just because there's so much action up there, in the wintertime especially, that, place to go to do paperwork, run a breath test. So we're thinking of moving that to Clymer. And that's off the record. No, I'm just kidding. It's not done yet. We're just talking. So good suggestion. Yes, sir.
Does each school have a resource officer now?
No.
And the ones that do have one, are they armed?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Right now, the sheriff's office, we have a school resource officer in BOCES, but we share that deputy between Laguitas and Hughes, which is not ideal at all. But we try to randomize that, so they go back and forth. We have a school resource officer at the Casadega Center for BOCES, and then we have one at Silver Creek and one in Forestville. No, it's not Job Corps. No, the old elementary school is now the alt ed for BOCES, so we have a full-time SRO there. I believe the city of Jamestown has 2, if I'm not mistaken, SROs, and then they have a team of off-duty or extra-duty law enforcement that comes in. I'm trying to think. Dunkirk, I believe, is in the process, if they aren't already approved. And I think that's it for the schools. I might have missed one, but Fredonia board just passed some sort of resolution or something. The Fredonia School Board, they're looking at trying to hire a retired police officer to come back and work in the school. So that's in the hopper. Yes, ma'am.
What about utilizing retired vets to come in and man the school? I'm sure you get a lot of guys that want to do that.
Again, that would be the school district's decision, because they do have the authority to authorize. So that's something that may be in the works places.
Would you suggest that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's been discussed, but I don't go to I'm not invited to the board meetings and stuff, but I do know that that's been discussed at some districts. And again, they can authorize that. It's liability too. They're going to look at that. I'm not making that as an excuse. I'm just telling you that's a reality. Yes, sir.
SROs, are they uniformed or plain clothes?
Uniform.
Don't you think perhaps a plainclothes approach might be a little bit more advantageous? Advertise the fact that the SROs do exist and we do have a presence, but if there's any nefarious actors out there, then they won't know who it is. And someone comes in and they could really take a chance, because once once the uniform is gone, the overarching guidance is also gone. And if we get somebody like what happened in Parkland, God forbid, then they say, well, there's nobody stopping.
Right, right.
It's just a thought.
Well, I can see cases if we had intel that there was an issue, we might put plainclothes people in there, even if we had a uniform SRO. But usually at this point in time, we're chasing even little rumblings because there's that much paranoia. What I mean by that is somebody makes a statement, we're on it like flies on poop. And that's just the way where we are right now. We can't ignore it. We just had a meeting with a school district, what is today? Yeah, this morning, about issues concerns. It turned out to be less of a concern than we.
I was just thinking that, we've got, I think there is, and I could be wrong, but isn't there like an auxiliary sheriff's force in this county?
No, the only thing that we have that's voluntary is our mounted division, the men and women that are on the horseback.
Might be able to get free labor. They would have to obviously comply with all the requirements for training. They'd have, and they'd have to go through all the parameters of safety. They could be cut just like a normal officer would be, but they'd be at no cost to the taxpayer. They would simply augment when a uniformed deputy who's on the payroll shows up. Obviously, they are the on-scene commander type, and they would perform, backup type thing. But they would be the first responder, and then we might be able to get all the school areas covered for nothing. Like your suggestion about, giving some vets, because a lot of people, they've served. That's in their nature. They just want to serve.
Absolutely.
They just don't want to stop.
Well, it is something I definitely will take back and talk about. But again, that would be with an SRO. That's why I feel that's my personal comfort level. If we have a school with an SRO, then we can look at other things that might augment that. Now, I hate to say this because but it's the world I live in. I also got to watch out I don't get a grievance. From if I'm given a pay, kind of tongue in cheek, but if I'm taking a paid job that was kind of a bad joke, but I might be what you made me think about is the academy.
Hearing this and then, because grants run out, grants are an evil thing anyway.
Oh,
because
they're
it's
a pain.
not free money, it's our money
Yeah.
anyway.
They're a pain to manage too. What you made me think of is there may be occasions that we might be able to take our academy recruits and give part of their assignment in before they become, because we have a pre-service academy. I don't know if everybody knows that. Our academy recruits go there on their own dime. So we as taxpayers don't pay for them. We're very unique in New York State. We started this program. In fact, my predecessor, Sheriff Bentley, started it. And let me back up a little to explain myself. Everywhere in the state prior to this, a police officer had to be hired and appointed before they could go to police training. Because the mindset was, this is esoteric knowledge and we can't share it with anybody, right? So you had to be a cop first. Well, then what happened is we started an arrangement with Jamestown Community College using their classrooms, just because ours was bad. I mean, we were in the sub-basement of the county building. And our phys ed, we ran the track at the old Mayville High School. It was tough in January, let me tell you, but that was before my time. So then what happened is over time, the academy started to be steadfast at the college. And then there was talk about, hey, could we give credit hours to these academy recruits for going through the academy? That turned into, hey, could they enroll like a class and we will let them come on their own and pay? And they have to go through the same jumping through hoops as anybody that would be a cop. I mean, obviously, you got to have a psychological, physical training and background investigation. So what we became is a full-fledged pre-service academy, which means you have to pay your way through. And that saves the taxpayers about between $10,000 and $20,000 a person that goes through the academy. And I say between, depending on if there's travel, if we had to pay for their travel. So when they graduate from our academy, they have 44 college credit hours from the academy. And then we're employing them. And we've got about a 96, 98% employment rate. If you go through the academy, you're going to get a job. It might be part-time to start, but you're going to get a police job. So you made me think about that, because possibly we could, as part of their assignment, at the end of the academy, after they've been through firearms, they've been certified, we have to give them 180 hours of field training. And we could maybe encompass some of that in their field training. Not a bad idea. And just to, again, talk about this academy, I've got to tell you about the bureaucracy. Because what we were doing is, the law says you have to be a police officer, it still says that. So the state put their foot on us and said, you can't do what you're doing. And I said, what are you talking about? Because we expanded this, under my, during my tenure. And they said, you can't do this. And I said, well, wait a minute. This is sensible. Every other county in the state, you're training, and the taxpayers are paying for the training. So, and the kids get something for it. They get college out of it. Plus, they're going to get a job. Our placement rate, we purposely keep the class at a certain number, because we don't want to oversaturate. Then you're going to have people leaving the county, to get jobs elsewhere, or leaving the state. So what happened was, I said, sorry, I had that V8 moment hit me. I go, wait a minute. I'm appointing these people as part-time trainee deputy sheriffs. They can't keep me from doing that. So we had meetings in Albany, and they finally caved in. But now they've taken this model statewide. So they broke the academy into 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. What the state's regulatory agency said is, look, everything that's hands-on, like firearms, defensive tactics, pursuit driving is hands-on. That's phase 2. Phase 1, all the academia, all the penal law and CPR and everything else, that's phase 1. You can teach phase 1 to anybody. You got to do phase 2 after you're a cop. Well, that cut the cost for police agencies way down. Now, we do both, but most every county now in the state has a phase 1, phase 2 academy because of us. The leaders way out here in the West. So, okay, I'm sorry I digress, but great idea.
There's a lot of people that would volunteer to keep eyes out.
Right.
How would they go about saying, listen, I'm a person, I'm an ex-military police, someone who has some qualifications, but they would like to maybe walk around the school, just outside the property, but they would be eyes there. How would you set up something that you would know who they are? Mm-hmm. They would have a number they could call in case they do see something. Because there could be a lot of people that would volunteer.
Sure, and the parking lots would
be make their own little things.
Sure.
But maybe not in the parking lot, but the surroundings.
Right. Oh, no, everything. And one of the things
a way for them to get a hold of you or the sheriff's department,
right.
Or the sheriff's department really should do it in the county anyway. But then that way you would know who they are, and there would got to be a reliable source.
Sure.
So and they could be eyes where you don't have them.
Good idea, and that's something we will discuss with the superintendents, because that might be district by district. Let's get a pool for this district. Let's get a pool for this district, and that might start off as an unarmed observer, and that might, once the trust factor gets, you can see how this could blend into something better in the future. But I think that would be a district by district effort. But I'll be happy.
For a walk.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things we learned in our church summit is you've got to have your observation teams during the service that aren't at the service. They're going, maybe there's a 2-service church and you're going to go to the second one yourself, but you're going to be the observer for the first service. And walking around, watching the doors. Schools and churches, we want to leave the doors open. Now we're locking down churches. There are schools a little more, but we can't keep them from opening the door for their buddies. That's a challenge that we face with a school building. A kid can open the door. So, anyway, other questions? Yes.
What did you come up with your big deal here the other day for churches? What are your thoughts now?
Well, I think what we try to do is plant the seed to go back each church go back with a safety committee. And our presenter laid that out step by step how to make that happen, and start looking at everything in your church, everything that could hurt somebody, kill somebody, that might be a danger in some way, shape, or form, and then build plans. And she's got so much material that is free on her website. So she gave that all up to everybody and said, download all these things for free. And so it was, I can't paraphrase 6 hours into 6 minutes, but she kind of laid it out, and then the FBI's, their piece was about recognizing threats, how to recognize the threats. And he went through some cases, all kinds of different shooting cases, not just schools, universities, all kinds of events. So my takeaway from that is plan, talk, practice. Part of that is prevention.
You mentioned liability. Who would be involved in that?
Well, here's the fear, because we fear liability more than it really happens. You're looking at the most sued person in Chautauqua County. True, I get sued more than anybody. And the reason is that it's mostly from the jail, because anytime there's an issue, you name the sheriff and then everybody else. And even writs of habeas corpus are considered, they go through the process like a lawsuit. I was being appointed to a state board. I'm on what's called the State Interoperable Emergency Communications Board. Say that 3 times fast. It used to be the 911 board, but they consolidated it. So they were doing a background on me, because I have to be fingerprinted and everything else. And not that you wouldn't know if I'd been arrested. I think that might make the paper or two. But anyhow, the office called me, the governor's office, appointments office said, "We have a problem. You've got 7 pending litigations against you." I go, "Really? This must be a slow month." But a lot of that comes from, you're getting named no matter, when you're at the top, you're getting named every time. And most of those things I say don't go anywhere, but they get, they do sue. So the liability, let's talk about that for a second. And again, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on television. But what I see is something happens, right? That in a school setting where, let's say we're talking about an armed teacher. The armed teacher shoots the wrong person. Someone's gonna get sued. I can pretty much guarantee you that. So the deep pockets principle is, let's see how many hands we can get into how many pockets, and the deeper the pocket, the better. Because they don't want to sue the cop. You ain't got nothing. Sue the county. Don't want to sue the teacher, sue the school district. So they're worried about things like that. How do we protect from what if this happens or that happens? And I could give you 1,000 examples, but we're all fearful of liability more than probably we should be. Can't have her.
5 minutes more.
Yeah, I do, because I have another event.
If I could, there was a one time, I actually had a lot of questions, but I'm going to have to limit to one. You mentioned in an article you were quoted as saying overcrowding in the jail, and at least what you were quoted as saying one of your proposed solutions is that upon arrest, the person of interest would be allowed to not go the arrest route for completion, and instead go to a case officer. You've got a bifurcated channel there. If someone chooses not to go through with the arrest, does he not give up his Fifth Amendment due process?
Well, I think what you're referring to is a program called LEAD, and I talked about it at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. The acronym is Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. It started out in Seattle, Washington, and what they're trying to do is break the cycle of the drug user, and they key on prostitution as well. And we don't have the street prostitution issue in this county that they do in places like that. And what they're doing with that, instead of incarcerating them, they get released, incarcerate them, release, this vicious cycle. They're trying to divert them to manage their drug issues immediately. And I mean right then at the scene, or
It's a dependency or mental health issue. I was concerned after reading the article because there wasn't a follow-up to that article, that someone would be giving up their due process rights.
No, none. You're not arresting them. That officer's given after training and what have you, they're giving the discretionary authority to say, okay, I'm not going to arrest this person. What we do know, an opioid addict that comes to jail and comes into the jail and is in jail a week or more, upon release have a 12 times greater chance of overdose. And it makes sense. We detox them, but we don't fix them. So they go right back to the same amount of drugs they were using before they came in, and they're dead. So we're killing them in a sense, not purposely, but and part of
The article should have been a little bit,
Oh.
there should have been follow-on.
I agree.
Because those of us that did read that article makes us think, well, wait a minute here. If we're just go ahead and say yes to the case officer, then we're giving up our rights.
No, and you're not going to get a guy like me to let that happen.
No, you explained it this way.
Yeah.
Again, it was the reporting challenge.
And what we're trying to do is, it's not going to be, we're not even sure that this will work for our county. We're going to have Albany City Police started this program. Ithaca is looking at it. They're in the developmental stages. We're going to look at raw numbers. Is it even practical for us? But I brought it up to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council because the cycle, we see it in our facility, and it's costing us a fortune because we're detoxing these people. We're treating them medically. And we have to come up with a better mousetrap.
2 minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes. Talk about you as a civilian. Talk a little bit about how you're teaching the kids in this area your favorite sport. I mean, hockey.
You're going to give me a chance to brag?
Yeah.
I was blessed this year. Well, I've been coaching ice hockey and girls softball and whatever I coach, everything I can coach. But this year I had the Jamestown Raiders high school hockey team, and we won the New York State Championship, and it was so much fun. So I had a great group of kids and their parents. They can't be what they are without their mom and dads making them those young men, and it was wonderful. It was a blessing. Yes, ma'am.
I worked years ago in the school district when you had the original grant to put school resource officers in the school. And I think there was a sense of anticipation and then frustration because the school resource officers really couldn't perform a lot of legal duties that you would like them to be able to do. So other than being a presence and providing safety in case of a catastrophic event, what would your 7-hour-a-day school resource officer be able to provide to a school district specifically to discipline drugs?
Yeah, we can. Well, the drug. Let me just tell you, when we're in a school, it's a different environment. It's a different community. In some cases, that is the biggest part of a community is the school during school hours. Everybody else has left the village or the town to go outside to work other places. But we're restricted in what we can do in the schools. That the principal has much more authority than the law enforcement officer. Principal will go up and open the locker. We can't do that. Now, we can be standing there next to the principal when they open the locker. Oh, we know what that is. Or we can run our dogs through. One of the things the school resource officer should be is a resource for the school. So our deputy should be having presentations brought in, bring in the dogs for even show and tell, but also for training and bring in speakers and presentations. So they should be doing and mentoring. I can't say counseling, mentoring.
I do think there's this assumption that, you've got a police officer in the school.
It's okay, yeah.
You've got somebody to send that kid you think has drugs on him. It doesn't work.
No, you can't do that unless we have the same rules of law, probable cause. We've got to make sure that we are abiding by the Constitution.
A certain age without
Right, but if it's exactly. If they're below 15, it's going to be 16 after October and 17 after October of 2019 because we're raising the age. We have to have parental consent to interview that child. So there's challenges the school resource officer has, no question about it. I know I'm getting the hook, but no, that's okay. I understand. That's okay. But I am more than happy anytime to come back and speak to you again. And I really pride myself in being accessible to you. So if you want to call my office, I give my cell phone number out. Reach me on social media if you're comfortable. You don't care about Facebook knowing everything about you. But
Already does.
But if you can reach me in lots of different ways if I can answer questions that I didn't answer tonight. Can I throw one other little thing in? Okay. I just want to talk about changes we made. How many of you guys have pistol permits? Guys and gals, pistol permits. Pistol permits. Okay, we've made some big leaps and bounds. Trying to cut the bureaucracy. The county legislature did grant, in my budget this year, gave me an additional, I moved a part-time person to full-time, so Betty has another full-time person because she's like overwhelmed. But we've changed the system a bit now. We hope to be able to get the permits out. Our goal is 6 weeks from time of application to producing the permit. Well, one of the things that we did that was another V8 moment, instead of coming to Mayville, now there's one trip to Mayville for somebody applying for a pistol permit. So the process today would be you take your course, get your application, and then you get a fingerprint appointment through what's called, I'm drawing a blank on it, but there's 2 centers, one in Jamestown at Lutheran and one up on Vineyard called Box Monkey, but they do this fingerprinting for us now. And so you make the appointment. We were backed up months just doing fingerprinting. So you can be fingerprinted. It's the same system that's used for teachers and bus drivers and whatever else, applications. So you go get fingerprinted, and they guarantee you're going to get a fingerprint appointment within 7 days. And then you send your application in. We do the background. And when you come up one time to get your picture taken, and then your permit's mailed to you in the mail after it's approved. So we're trying to cut that red tape down and make it one trip to Mayville. Nobody wants to go to Mayville 2 or 3 times to get a pistol permit. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you all.